Hi, welcome everyone. It's really nice to see you today. I'm here with a Bristol Parent Carer Forum. I'll get them to introduce themselves in a second, but just to let you know, I'm Laura and I'm an associate for Contact. And I've been asked to capture some stories from parent carer forums. So, some really interesting ways of working that forums have found to approach different challenges or maybe different things that are happening in their local area, or different kind of ways they can capture information, do engagement, all sorts of different things. So I've got the privilege today of speaking to Pebbles and Hayley. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I will not do it justice as much as they can do.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Pebbles Angell and I am the engagement coordinator and a parent voice facilitator at Bristol Parent Carers.
Brilliant, thanks Pebbles. And I'm Hayley Hemming and I am CEO of Bristol Parent Carers.
Amazing. Thanks, Hayley and Pebbles. So today's kind of story that we're hearing about, and a kind of example of a way of working that you found at Bristol Parent Carer Forum, is around the use of data. I know that a lot of forums are interested in how other forums collect data. So I know that this is going to be a really kind of key watch for other forums. So you've done a presentation, which you're going to go through. And if it's okay with you, if I see anything that I want to ask a question about, because I know that forums will be wanting to maybe ask some questions themselves, maybe I can just kind of interject a little bit and say, oh, I'm a bit curious about this. So we'll go from there, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds great. Excellent. Thank you so much, Laura. I thought it would be a really great place to start by talking to everybody about who Bristol Parent Carers are and the families that we support. So the clue's in the name, really. We are based in Bristol, as you'd probably expect, and we currently have 4,100 parent carer members on our database. And those members are we do look quite a lot at who our members are, where they live, what the needs of their child are, what their needs may be, and we kind of put all that data together to give us a really good overview about our membership. So we currently represent 29% of parent carers from global majority groups, and those families have children or young people with 25 different types of needs. In addition to our membership, the kind of history of Bristol Parent Carers is also really, really interesting. So the organisation was established back in 2014, which is obviously quite a long time ago now. In 2019, we had our local area SEND inspection, which was closely followed up by COVID, the global pandemic, as you can see from the little blue coronavirus symbol. At the time, the forum was primarily led by volunteers, and as I'm sure many of the other forums watching this will know, this was a really tricky, turbulent time for those of us that were volunteer led. It did mean that a lot of our volunteers could no longer volunteer for the forum. They had to stay home with their own children. They had a lot of other complications and different types of things they needed to be considering. They weren't necessarily thinking predominantly about the Parent Carer Forum during that time, as I'm sure we can all understand. And then back in 2021, as we kind of came out of the pandemic, the forum went through a process of restructuring. So at the time, I volunteered to become chair of the Parent Carer Forum. And then in 2022, that led to a kind of expansion, if you like. We registered as a charity. We changed the way our constitution works, giving our members more rights, more kind of say in how the charity operates. And we were also recognised as the local area kind of DFE funded forum, if you like, which brings us on to 2023-24, and we kind of grew our trustee board from 4 trustees at the time, and we're now at 13 trustees on our trustee board. So we've gone through a really big period of change and significant growth, if you like. But we kind of, at the beginning, back in 2021, we didn't even have the DFE funded money from, the DFE grant. So we kind of had to think really carefully about what we were doing, why we were doing it, what data we were gathering, and how we would use that data to kind of facilitate this expansion in our growth.
That's an amazing journey in 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's really, really impressive. And to get to a point where you've got, how many trustees did you say you've got?
There are 13 now on the board.
Wow.
So it's a really big board. Yeah, we're very, very lucky. We've got like quite a variety of different trustees as well. So we've got people from different community backgrounds. We've got people working in different roles. It's just really great actually to draw from that strength and that expertise. So we're really lucky.
Amazing, amazing.
Fab. I'll just talk a little bit briefly about our current kind of like where we started from and where we are now. So once we had the kind of DFE funding, we did also get a small amount of ICB funding. So back in 23-24, our funding was better than some forums, I'd say, because obviously we do have the additional funding from the ICB, but potentially not as big and broad as some of the other parent care forums that we kind of know. Currently, we do now receive funding from our ICB and our LA, as well as the DFE grant, and we've worked really hard to basically using our data, which is why it's so important to be kind of using and gathering this information. We've used that to kind of work on our development and fundraising initiatives, so that data really helps those sorts of applications. So we are in a really, really lucky, privileged position, if you like, that I know not all parent carer forums are, but back at the beginning, back in 2022, when we kind of went through that restructure process, we thought really carefully about, what is the data that we're gathering? Why are we gathering it? What's the impact we're hoping it can have? And most importantly, how much money and time is it going to cost us? So the systems and processes that we developed can be implemented by any forum. So even if you don't have significant sums of money coming in from various sources, everything that we're going to talk about today is free and can be implemented by any PCF that have the kind of awareness to do so, basically.
That's really helpful to know, Hayley, because I think a lot of forums would be thinking that it's like, gosh, this is a big journey that this forum has gone on over a period of time, the restructure, and then obviously lots of different funding streams. But actually, what you're saying is that this can be done by a forum who maybe is just getting the Department for Education grant, because some of the things you're saying that collect that data are free to use for anyone. So that's great to know.
Well, thanks, Laura. I'm going to hand over to Pebbles, and she's just going to talk a little bit about the work that we kind of do and where and how we kind of go about gathering data from families. So I'll pass over to Pebbles.
Okay, thanks, Hayley. We offer a few different ways for parents and carers to connect and to get support, and ways in which we collect data. So as you can see, we offer and provide monthly community peer support sessions, which is an opportunity for parents and carers to meet with a BPC or Bristol Parent Carer peer supporter. We do parent carer engagement sessions, which can either be online or in person. And this is where we gather views of parents and carers on the crucial and essential SEND services in Bristol. We also do practitioner-led online and in-person sessions, which are more like support sessions for parents and carers. And we also have our school-based peer support sessions, which take place in schools and run in the same way as community peer support sessions. It's really important for us to gather the data and gather information about how these services impact on parents and carers who we support primarily. And there are a number of ways in which we do this. So we ask for responses from surveys and feedback forms. We also advertise a lot of our sessions on Eventbrite, and on Eventbrite we also have an order form where we gather important data such as child's needs, parent and carer background, ethnicity, and so on. And we also use QR codes as well on our literature and posters, which parents and carers can click on, and then a form will come up, and then they also fill in their personal details. That's how we gather information about parents and carers and their children, demographics and so on. In order to receive feedback on the services and support that we offer, we collect those in survey forms, either using Survey Planet or Microsoft Forms or Google Forms. We also use signposting leaflets, which we hand out at some of our community sessions. And these leaflets also have a QR code that people can scan to access resources and leave their feedback. We also use shortened links in social media and on our website, and wherever we advertise digitally through Bitly. And Bitly collates the data, how many clicks, how many people clicked onto that link, and then that will collate that information, so we know how many people interacted with that particular link, and then we can gather data on what is of interest to parents and carers and what isn't, and so on. We also analyse our data through social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. So we can again analyse interactions to what we have posted on these social media platforms, and that data, along with the Bitly data, feedback data, and form data, forms the basis with which we analyse all our interactions with parents and carers. So then we know how the impacts that the services that we offer have on parents and carers.
I've got so many questions, Pebbles.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Go for it.
So I just kind of run through it a bit quickly.
It's just kind of blown my mind a little bit in the there's so many different avenues that you capture data, and I guess some of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is about parent carers needing it in different ways and being able to capture it in different ways, I guess, because you're working with a really broad demographic of people
of course,
of the population of Bristol. So and I've never even heard of Bitly, so I'm kind of like, wow, what the heck is that? It'd be, so that's a way of capturing information.
It's a way of capturing interactions, really, in terms of, so as an example, when we offer a online or in-person peer support session, and we're advertising it on Facebook, say, we want to know, how did that person hear about or book their session? And it will collect that information. So we will know that, say, I don't know, 20% of the people that booked onto our peer support session used the Bitly link to do that, or 20% used, directly linked, booked their session through Eventbrite. So it's really important for us to know what is successful and what isn't, in terms of getting people involved in what we do.
Just to quickly add on that, you, as well as using the hyperlinks, the links that Pebbles has just spoken about, you can also use it quite creatively with QR codes. So, for example, at our annual event, we had a poster in Polish and a poster in Somali, and they were in different places across the city, and we wanted to know which place that was being viewed the most in terms of the poster. So each poster had a unique QR code. So we knew, for example, the one on the corner shop had this QR code, and then we could see that was scanned X times, but then the one that was in like the notice board outside the mosque, that was scanned this amount of times. So we can really see the places where posters have been viewed really successfully, or conversely less successfully. So it can be used in a really, really creative way, and it's really easy to use. Would you say that, Pebbles? I'd say it's really simple to use.
Absolutely. And you mentioned accessibility, Laura. So using these different ways of interacting with our parents and carers is a really good way to ensure that we reach as many people as possible. And like Hayley touched upon, using it in different ethnic groups, these people accessing our services and so on and so forth. And if we do notice any gaps through this data, then we will try and fix them to ensure that we are reaching out to everybody who needs to use or desires to use the services that we provide.
It sounds like a constant flow of information that's coming back to you then, really, in that you're and that's so vital, isn't it, to make sure that that reach is there, because you are understanding in your area what's working and how people are interacting with things. It's amazing.
Yeah. I just it may sound like quite a lot of work, but it's actually fairly straightforward. It also isn't difficult for our families to use either. So just going back to this slide, when we go to a peer support session in the community, or we go to a school-based peer support session, we like meet the family, we say hi, nice to meet you, we have a little chat, get a cup of tea, whatever they need, and then we'll kind of say, do you want to stay informed on events in the local area? Do you want to have news from the Parent Care Forum? And they invariably say yes. And then we have a really short Google form that just says, what's your name, the first part of your postcode, some ethnicity data, a question about the needs of their child. And it's all like a tick box. So they don't need to be able to write lots of information. And it takes, like, the average response time is 2.5 minutes. So it literally is so quick for families to complete. And it means that form isn't a barrier. We're not collecting like masses of data at that point. We're just collecting enough information to know who our families are, where they live, what the needs of their child are, and that's basically the core information, I would say, that we tend to aim for in these sorts of sessions. And yeah, it all pulls through, so you can use one form in all different places, and it all pulls through into one big well, we use Google Form, but like Pebbles said, other people can use different things. It pulls it through into one big database, if you like, which is really versatile and easy to use.
Yeah, it does sound complicated, but it really isn't. These simple steps. So what makes it seem complicated, it seems like there's a lot of steps. But these steps are really small and simple steps that come together to create the whole piece of analysis. I'm not particularly computer or digitally literate, but yet I was able to sort of use this information and create some of the information. So it's really accessible to anybody really who's thinking about creating or using this for their forums.
Yeah. Well, I'll move on to the next slide, and this one talks more about the kind of practicalities in terms of, like, literally how do you go about this. So we know how we meet our families, we know how we gather the views of our families, but I think it's helpful for others listening to kind of understand all the different ways, all the different systems that we use. And alongside this video, we've actually prepared a bit of a flow chart. So if other parent care forums want to kind of refer to that afterwards, you can make it really easy. So we use 3 kind of key tools, if you like. The first one is something called Zapier. That's obviously the orange square. The green square is the symbol for Google Sheets, but if you're a Microsoft user, you can use Google Forms. It's exactly the same thing. And then the last symbol is a pivot table, which is basically a formula that is within Google Sheets or Google Forms, which you can use at the click of a button, and it's really straightforward, and it kind of counts data for you, so you don't have to like manually sit there counting like how many families came. We don't always know the answer to everything. We're not data experts by any stretch, so when we get stuck, we do often have to look things up on YouTube and ask our colleagues, anybody know how to do this, and between us all, we tend to just find a way of kind of making these things happen. So I'm going to talk you through each of these one at a time. So the first one is Zapier. This one is free. I'm going to say that a lot in this webinar. And what this can do for forums is quite a lot of the work that we do can be administratively burdensome, I suppose, is one way to describe it. It moves information from place to place, so you don't necessarily have to have a person doing it. So, for example, we use Zapier in terms of data to move information from an Eventbrite order form. So families might fill out an order form and say, they might give us information about where they live or the demographic information, and then it's Zapier takes the information and puts it into our MailChimp, which is our system that we use to directly mail families. So we don't need to have an administrator pulling down a report and doing it. And that's the exact same thing for our peer support session. So when somebody comes to a peer support session, they fill in the form, they give us their information, and the moment that information hits that Google form, Zapier then will send that person an email to say, like, welcome to the Parent Carer Forum. So we don't need an administrator there kind of doing that for them. If you use this is not really data related, but just to talk a bit more about Zapier, if you use like a calendars type system, and sometimes people will put data on Eventbrite, they'll say, like, we're doing this session here on this date, this session here on that date, and then they'd manually have to go to their calendar, which might be in Outlook or Google, and they'd manually have to put that information in there. But you can tell Zapier that anything you put on Eventbrite, put it in the calendar, so it does it for you, so you're not having to kind of carry that information across. It's free up to like a limit. I think it might be 100 zaps, they call them, so 100 different activities, which is more than enough to get anybody kind of started. So yeah, we currently automate in a month 750 different processes, so we're using it really, really broadly, but it doesn't need to be used in that really broad way. It can be used as just a very narrow admin saving time tool, if you like. So we find that one really super helpful. Any questions on that one, Laura, before I move on? Did I blow your mind, or are you good?
Again, I think that, the idea, because I know capacity is a massive issue for forums, and time, being stretched, and having strategic meetings to attend, but also kind of making sure that they continue to engage and hear from families. And I know that administration can be really heavy, so taking a little bit of that away by using this feels like it could be so helpful. And the fact that it's free up to 100 zaps, did you say?
Zaps.
So
yeah. And even when you go past 100, it's still fairly low cost, considering the time it saves you. So yeah, when we weren't DFE funded, so we only had one member of staff on 7 hours a week, and then 2 volunteers. So it was literally just 3 people running the whole forum. So we needed to be really creative in thinking, well, we don't have much money in the bank. We don't really have any people to do anything. How can we do the things that need to be done? And so Zapier was something we came across kind of accidentally, but now we use it extensively every day, so it's been a massive game changer for us, I would say. Okay, so the next one I'll talk about is Google Sheets, but again, we use Google Sheets, but Excel is the exact same thing. So I'm going to just use the phrase Google Sheets, but please, if you use Excel, there's no need to change, just carry on using Excel. The reason that we originally used Google Sheets is because it is free. So if you are an organization that without any kind of income or without much income, then it's really helpful because it's totally free. Whereas Microsoft projects tend to be free if you're a charity, but not free if you're a CIC. So it just depends. So if you're not, if you kind of don't have Microsoft yet and you're thinking, how can I do this? Definitely, I would recommend Google Sheets. It's really easy. So the way that the best way to think of it is there's a front end and a back end. So the front end is the part that the parent carer would see, which we use a Google form for. And then everybody that fills in the form, all their responses are sent to the Google Sheet. So that just happens automatically. It stays in sync. You don't ever need to worry about it. It's been there for 4 years. It just does its thing. We don't do anything to it. It just stays there. When we kind of first developed the form, we asked for certain information, and we found that actually some of the families felt like it was taking too long to complete. So we changed the form to make it easier and faster. And that doesn't affect the data on the back end, if you like. The end of the spreadsheet is the end that I describe as the back end. So it's super easy to change. So say you think, oh, actually, this month we'd really like to gather views on a particular service. So go to your peer support session, you ask all your kind of core data, as we call it. Where do you live? What's the needs of your child? Your ethnicity, your email address. That's kind of our core information. But say that we were having we were running a session with our local authority on short breaks, we might want to ask families 2 more questions. We might want to say, have you ever used short breaks? And then maybe something like why not? But the trick is not to make it too long, because you don't want it to be a barrier. So we tend to say 3 questions maximum, and you can easily edit the Google form to add those questions. So we call it passive feedback. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but basically parents are giving us that information without having to come to a particular event to share their views or having to kind of fill out an additional form. They're there in the moment, coming to a peer support session, and it's almost incidental that they've kind of giving us this view on short breaks, as in that example. So it's really, really easy to kind of change. And then at the end, when you kind of look at the information on the spreadsheet, it's really easy to synthesize. You can kind of see at a glance, because the answers come in like a row. So you'll be able to see I've got 283 responses, because that would be the last number on the row. So it really simplifies any kind of mathematical issue that you're not having to go through paper forms and add things up. Or sometimes some people have data in one place and in another place, and they might need to add them together. So if we've got everything in one sheet, it really simplifies that process. So we find Google Sheets, Google Forms, they are an excellent pair for us.
I mean, I'm just kind of thinking about that capturing of like little bits and pieces of insight and experience from families, and just being able to add it as an add-on to the data that you're already collecting from people, particularly if there's an issue in that space or in that kind of service, or if there's something that's it's a theme, I guess, isn't it, that's come up, and you want to capture some of that information. That's a great way, because you're already kind of, asking people some questions, and then you just add some simple questions on top of that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we always try to just keep those questions no more than 3 and as simple as possible. So whenever we do like co-production type work, we always think, what are the 3 key questions? What are the 3 things that if we don't ask anything else, these were the 3 things that we needed to be answered? So it just gives us that really valuable insight without asking parents to do another thing, because we all know parent carers are busy. So kind of it takes that extra load, I suppose, from families, but then
it's
also
less onerous, isn't it? Less onerous,
yeah.
completely.
Yeah.
And just makes it really simple, like you say.
Yeah. Pivot tables, Pebbles is going to talk to us about, because Pebbles uses them a bit more than I do, because Pebbles does all our post data analysis. So it'd be helpful, Pebbles, if you would mind just going through that part.
Of course, no problem. So as Hayley explained, we gather our data and we place it into either an Excel spreadsheet or a Google form. And so what we then do is then use the essential information from that form or spreadsheet to then calculate, summarise and analyse the data that we've received. We do anonymise, if that's a word, the information. So we don't put in parents' names, email addresses or home addresses or postcodes. It's just the answers to the crucial questions that we need, along with ethnicity and child's needs. So then this is placed into what we call a pivot table, or rather, sorry, the spreadsheet is converted into a pivot table. And then we use a formula to calculate the percentage of, as an example, parents' children who have a diagnosis of autism, say, or the percentage of parents and carers who are from a ethnic background. And then that information, those numbers are literally converted into a percentage, which we then place into another form that stores all this information, which we then forward on to, if necessary, to our funders, this anonymous feedback, this anonymous information to our funders to show the difference that we're making, and to secure funding in the future and to expand the work that we do. So again, sounds complicated, really hard to put across on a video, but really simple, a really simple thing to do.
It sounds like you could make some really good infographics from that as well, in terms of like, reports and stuff. Is that right? Would you use it for something like that as a report to funders? And
yeah, we would.
Yes.
So it gives you For example, when we have our practitioner-led sessions, other parent carer forums might call them parent carer training or webinars. They're basically information sessions that we don't facilitate. They're facilitated by an external practitioner. Every single session will have its own set of data. So we put the information from everyone into one sheet. So it's just one row, and it will say, like today, Pebbles facilitated a dyslexia session. So it will say we had our dyslexia session, X parents came, X% had autistic children, X% had dyslexic children, X%, goes through the list. And the pivot table calculates that for you. You don't need to calculate it. You just need to put it into the kind of, we call it the overview sheet. So it shows you every single event that we do is all there on one sheet. It shows you the entire picture. So then when we speak to funders or do an impact report, it's really, really clear that, we've spoken to this many families. This was the type of need that their child had. This is what they said about our event. And we can kind of say, various statistics based on that really simple summary. So it is really helpful. We can also use it to speak to parents and carers. So we, at the end of any co-production work that we do, we would say, in kind of responding to this work, we spoke to X number of families, and we know that their children were from these sorts of backgrounds, and we know that these families were from these sorts of backgrounds. So we recently did a co-produced piece with our local authority on our send and inclusion strategy, and we noticed that in our demographic responses, the Asian community weren't well represented. Like at that point, we'd kind of looked at the data and we said, we've got a little bit of a gap here. And so we were, because of the project timeline, it meant that we had enough time. We'd spotted that in the data. We had enough time to go and speak to other community groups and say, who do support the Asian community, and say, like, could we speak to your members or your families, and could we ask them questions about the send and inclusion strategy? Can we, join forces a little bit and get some views from your community so that we can make sure all the work that we do is representative of the broad and diverse range of families in Bristol? But we can only do that because we're kind of gathering this data in this really simplistic, fast overview way, and it is really helpful. To just a pivot table will solve so many problems.
So basically, I think Hayley pretty much explained how the data helps us. So obviously it does allow parents and carers to use their voice to let us know, so we can let people in authority know the needs for them and their families. And again, through our engagement sessions, primarily, that is where we are able, and the 3 questions, this is how we are able to discern what parents and carers need for their children. Again, gathering that feedback as well, it kind of does form a bit of an overview of what is of relevance to parents and carers at a particular time, or within a particular demographic, or within a particular community, so that we can tailor our support for that particular need at that particular time. And as Hayley said as well, it's really important that we have this information held and documented to show the impact that we are having on SEND communities and families and SEND children, so that then we are able to then receive the funding to then further support the SEND community.
I think the last one on this slide is really important, because 2-3 years ago, when we spoke to our colleagues in education, health or social care, and we would say, like, this is a problem in the community, we didn't always have enough data to really represent that it was a problem. And it was kind of felt, how much do you really know? How do we know? That's the true kind of feeling. And so this wealth of data has really helped us with pushing those kind of issues that the community having, making them a priority for other people that we're working with. And I think it's just I don't know, gives what the Parent Carer Forum say a little bit of weight, if you like, behind us, that it's not, I don't know for every area, and it's certainly not like this in Bristol now, but historically there's been a perception of, it's just a few mums around the table, a bit of a PTFA type of vibe, but it's not. It's a professional organisation, and we are gathering the views of families all the time. We've got that constant temperature check about what's happening in the community, but now we've got the data behind it, so we can if we needed to, we can pull off a report that says X families have told us this, and it does really lend weight to kind of what we're saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of forums that would resonate with them in terms of, you know, presenting information back to strategic partners. And some of that it can sometimes be a bit of a barrier and a block, can't it? If what they then say to you is, well, where have you got that from? How have you collected that? Is that information representative of the population? And there's so many questions that come back about the information that you're sharing, that you kind of then put in a position where you need that evidence base, don't you, to be able to show and say, this is it. We've collected this from all of these different sources and different ways, and present it back to strategic partners to say, what are the solutions to some of these things that we are now presenting you with? Let's work together. And that's the kind of starts to build that trust and relational foundation that's required for co-production. In kind of my opinion, is that it gives that credibility, doesn't it, of like, this organization is collecting that information. How do we use it in the best way possible to make sure services are fit for purpose?
Yeah.
And ultimately, that is what it's for, I think, or primarily that's what it's for, because, you know, without this, we can't really have that much of an impact, really, I suppose. You know, without that information, it would be very
It's
difficult.
essential.
Yeah, for sure.
And when we speak to strategic partners, it means that the conversation isn't, you know, where did this come from? You know, is it broad? Is it diverse? The conversations are more solutions focused from the beginning, which is just so helpful. It just makes such a big difference in your kind of working relationship with your stakeholders across education, health and social care. So yeah, definitely couldn't be without it, really. It seems to be a real productive way, I suppose, of kind of going about finding solutions to problems. So yeah. Okay, we're nearly at the end, and I think we've talked about this a lot anyway, all through the presentation. And on top of the kind of community impact, we do an impact report at the end of every year. I'm happy for you to put a link to that, Laura, alongside the video, so parent carers can have a look at it. And that really helps our community. So it really helps our community know what the Parent Carer Forum are doing, what we're trying to achieve for our parent care community, where our kind of strategic goals and priorities are, if we've achieved them, if we haven't, what we're looking to do next year so that we can achieve them. It also means that we can create case studies. So data is really, really helpful, but case studies bring the data to life, if you like. So it puts a kind of story to the data, makes it more relatable. And again, that's really, really important in terms of increasing engagement with our stakeholders and confidence, because I am sure that many of the parent carer forums have heard that, you know, we're not impartial. Especially because now in Bristol, we're funded by our local authority. So just these two factors, the impact reports and the case studies, just really highlight the community. We are constantly pushing for kind of things for our community, what the data tells us that families are looking to achieve, and you know, as much as we can, we do kind of push that along. And then the other side of it is that it does mean that we can apply for grants to other organisations. So we've been really successful it's coming up to the end of the financial year, isn't it? So in this current financial year, we've had 4 different grants awarded. So that I'm terrible with names, but National Lottery, Garfield and Western, Quartet, and another one that I've forgotten the name of. But they've all been really impressed with how much data we've got, how we've kind of presented the data to them, because we often get feedback after every application, and one of them came back to us and said the data that we gave them was really easy for them to understand. They didn't need to meet us at all. We just gave them the data, and it was just fairly self-explanatory. So that's been really helpful in kind of getting those grants in, which again also leads back to increasing engagement in our community, because the more we can do independently of, you know, the funding from the local authority or the funding from the ICB, it just means that we can demonstrate that we're working for our community, which I think lots of families really, really value. And then I thought it'd be really helpful to talk a little bit about our plans for future data. So I won't kind of go into it too much, but I am a bit of a data nerd, I suppose. I think the secret will be out now that we've made this video. We've been looking into ways to visually capture the data in a way that means we don't have, because currently we have to create a report, which we use Canva to do. You can get like a free template in Canva and you just put your own figures in there, so it works totally fine. But this new thing that we've recently come across by accident, actually, again, it's free, it's called Looker Studio, and it takes the information from the Google form and it creates a visual dashboard. So every day it updates, so we don't ever need to pull a report, we can just look at it. So before any strategic meeting, so we have like a send board meeting and an exec board meeting, that's part of the standing agenda items that everybody in the meeting will look at the dashboard, but we don't need to prepare a report to send with it. It's just a hyperlink in the agenda, and they click it, and you go through to the studio, and you can see, and you can break it up in all different ways. So we've kind of got ours that all our peer support session information is first, and there are a couple of can never say this word, qualitative like responses from families, and then the second one is focusing more on our practitioner led sessions and the data that we get from there, and then the last one is our parent carer forum data, like us as an organization, so how many members we've got, how many trustees we've got, number of staff, that sort of thing. And it's a really easy snapshot, so that, yeah, we've only just started to really use it, but we're really excited about the potential that will have in the future. We've also been looking at developing a strategy. So we currently, probably because of the way funding works in lots of areas, kind of like it goes year to year, but we've been trying to think longer term, and we've developed on the back of the data rather, we've developed a strategy with our, we call them friends of the forum, so other groups in Bristol who we work closely with. So we've been able to look at our data and say, like, this is a constant theme that we're hearing from families. It's often like something isn't clear or something they don't understand a process, so we're working together as friends of the forum to kind of create things that will help solve some of these problems that have come up through the data. And then the last one on here is just really making it clear to families like the importance of sharing their views with us, or filling in this form, or coming along to peer support sessions, because I think that some families totally understand the work of a parent carer forum, other families are still not totally sure, and especially those where you've might have a child that you're not really sure what's going on, you're not sure if it's send, which lots of people feel a bit like, oh, I don't know if that's me. So just really focusing, using our data to focus on the gaps, and like the families that we're not kind of meeting, that don't know about us, and looking at how we can make sure that as many families as possible in Bristol know who we are, know what we do, and like know the support that they can access, really. And looking at our data, even just our postcodes, we can see one particular postcode, we don't get as many families. Let's go there, do a community coffee morning. Let's kind of get the word out. So yeah, that's our plans for the future.
What an amazing vision for the future. I mean, and I have to mention, the fact that you can use that dashboard, and it actually takes some of that. Is it like a confidence building thing for people who can go into those meetings knowing they are backed up by the information that they can then share with strategic partners? I kind of feel that that's a really key thing. Using some of the local community groups, the friends of the forum, as you say, to work together to understand what's happening locally, so you can fill gaps. I mean, that's a great way of working. And then also that vital part in parent carers knowing what a parent carer forum is, and sharing that information. And so you are capturing and looking at where people's knowledge or understanding of the forum isn't as good as some other areas, so that you can actually see what you need to do in order to maybe go and market the forum in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
and I wish I had a hat to take off and say happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you. I think the way that the data kind of comes through, so we can see in one particular postcode area, we've had really good success, and we were thinking to ourselves, like, what have we done in this postcode that's been so different to everywhere else? And it's just been, you just wouldn't notice things like that if you didn't have this data. So it's just been really, really invaluable to just kind of think more reflectively about how we're doing things. It also means that we're constantly kind of reviewing how we do things, because we can see that something's not quite working, and so it just means that we're really using our time and our kind of energy in a really efficient way. And I think so many parent care forums are stretched and overworked, and it is really difficult. So I think knowing where your biggest wins and your easiest wins are is just really, really valuable for so many parent care forums. Okay, I thought I'd round us off with this one. I think that we've obviously covered quite a lot here today, and I think that some people might be sat at home or in the office or wherever you are thinking, oh, this is great, but I'm not confident, or I'm a bit worried. And I think the primary thing to say is that everybody starts somewhere. So don't watch this and think I've got to do A, B, C, and D. Just do A, see how you get on with A, and then once you feel comfortable with that, try B, and then try C. Just don't feel like you've got to do everything all at once. It's really easy to just start somewhere small. So we started off with our school-based coffee mornings, our peer support sessions in schools, and we just used the data from there. And then once we got comfortable with that, we said, okay, right, let's use it in the community. Let's start, making sure we use this form when we're meeting families in the community. And then we added in our practitioner-led sessions last. So just take it one step at a time is my best advice. Use Google and YouTube to find any ways of solving problems. So I said earlier that we're not, experts. We don't know the ins and outs of everything, but a very quick YouTube or very quick Google can get you where you want. We've also recently started to use Chat GPT, which I'm sure many people have heard of. So you can often put in there, you can put it's literally like you're speaking to a friend. You'll just type into it, I'm trying to create a pivot table and it's not working because of X. Can you help? And it will just tell you. It will just tell you the answer, and then just go off and try it. When it comes to data, always keep a backup. So if you're using something like Google Sheets, then you don't need to worry about that because it creates its own backup. But if you're using something that isn't cloud-based, so if you're using Microsoft Excel on your own computer, then you would need to find a way to back it up. And I think the key one is don't be afraid of change. So I think if you're a forum that's been established for a long time and you're kind of thinking, oh, this sounds great, but we already do this, or we do that, or we, if you're just generally not, maybe don't have any kind of data gathering, but you feel like it's too much, then like I said earlier, don't be afraid of change. Just start at the beginning with something really small, and yeah, go from there. I think it is possible.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. There's no such thing as failure. It is a learning curve. It's an evolving process. It's something that evolves as your forum grows. So as your forum grows, you're gonna naturally look for ways to capture that data and to keep track on what is happening. So it is an evolving process. And yeah, you will get there.
I mean, you will get there. What a great final line to end on, is that because I know that people will be a little bit worried and thinking, crikey, where do I even start with some of this? But I think those final thoughts you've just given there really sum it up lovely. I think, small steps, use the tools that are available to you. There's a wealth of them out there, isn't there? Keep a copy. If you need to, keep a copy so you don't lose anything. And yeah, absolutely, don't be afraid to start, and the change is good, isn't it? And learning new things is good. If we stay somewhere where we feel comfortable, we kind of stop learning things. And so we need to feel a little bit uncomfortable in spaces, first of all, to kind of learn a bit more about what we need to do. So thank you so much for,
Thank
I
you.
mean, I feel enlightened and I feel enthusiastic and motivated to go and share this further with people. So thanks so much, Pebbles and Hayley, for sharing all of that. I'm going to say that thank you. It will be available for people to watch on the website. We have some good practice pages for forums to go and have a look at. Hayley and Pebbles mentioned some links that we can put alongside the recording that we've done today. And so people can go and have a look at it in their own time. And hopefully people will watch this with, you know, or dip in and out of it, maybe with a cup of tea and a biscuit or something.
Recommend that way.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a privilege talking to you.
Thanks, Laura.
And thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.